Hello, everyone. Welcome to BATTASS Podcast, the Batman the Animated Series show podcast, where we talk about Batman the Animated Series, or in this case, Batman Beyond. My name is Clay McCormick, and with me, as always, is Sean Murphy. How you doing, Sean?
Good, man. I finally am able to get into Zorro and feel like I've beat my insecurity. Um, I'll talk about this more at the second half of this podcast because people love when they seem to love when I talk about insecurity because it's very everyone can empathize with that. And man, I thought that jumping into Zorro after Batman would be easy because you've got a character who wears black on black and blah blah blah. But as I dove into Toth's Zorro, it started to get in my head, and part of me is like, man, Toth's awesome, and then part of me is like, fuck you, Toth. I feel like I'm studying his art in a way I never have before because I'm sort of following in his footsteps. I have a lot of thoughts on Toth, and good and bad things, so we can get into that later. Luckily, he's dead, so he can't defend himself.
Well, and also you're tackling your fear of flat-brimmed hats.
Yes, exactly. You
Which
think
is
a simple
very
ellipse
brave of you.
would take care of it. I mean, he used to freehand that shit. I use an ellipse because we've got the time.
Anyway, today we're going to be talking about two episodes, Terry's Friend Dates a Robot and Eyewitness. So we'll take a quick break and we'll be back with Terry's Friend Dates a Robot. I wonder what that one is about.
Down, girlfriend. Hope I wasn't out of line with that robo-bim crack.
All right, Terry's Friend Dates a Robot. Story by Paul Dini, teleplay by John P. McMahon, directed by Dan Reba. And in this one, Howard Groot, a hopeless nerd, purchases an illegal android in the form of a beautiful girl to pose as his girlfriend. His plan soon backfires when Cynthia, programmed to be completely devoted to Howard, becomes dangerously possessive. Note, this was the last episode to use traditional cell animation before the transition to animation with digital ink and paint.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Interesting, yeah. I did feel like both of these episodes looked really good.
Yeah.
Whatever reason. The animation was definitely dialed up.
Yeah, the second one I had read as I was watching it that it was the first one to be digitally painted. And I don't know if I would have noticed it without reading that, but I was paying closer attention, and it does... It looks pretty close, but there are a lot of the fire effects and stuff feel a little different. But I don't think I would have noticed if it hadn't been pointed out. It looked pretty good.
Yeah.
So this one starts out with giving the classic version of the Riddler more screen time than I think he got in the entirety of the new Batman Adventures.
I know! It's immediately more exciting when you include the original Batman stuff. And I know they were purposefully leaning away, but this backs up my theory. It's like, why? Why not dive into that stuff more?
Yeah, it's getting into the episode, I kind of feel like I understood why they did that, because the rest of the episode feels like a pretty stock high school thing. It doesn't really feel like Batman so much. And so pumping the beginning full of Riddler, Killer Croc, and Two-Face will definitely get you hooked and get you set in for whatever this is that comes after. I'm not saying it's bad, but it's not like the most Batman episode we've ever seen.
So the robot, the tech guy who was making robots, looked like he should be played by
Steve Buscemi.
Steve Buscemi, yeah.
Yeah.
100%. And I thought for a second that they would say this is the version of Hardak. Maybe this is the evolution of that company. Like, why not just throw that in there as an Easter egg?
Yeah, I looked it up because they were using the word synthoid a lot. And I was like, that sounds really familiar. Have they mentioned that before? I guess this is the first time they use that term. And it comes up a couple other times in later episodes. But
why? Why not make it the son of awesome Carl?
Carl, yeah, awesome Carl, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was I was wondering about that. I was also wondering when Terry goes there to pick up Bruce's robot order, the guy's like, man, Bruce Wayne really going through a lot of these robots. And I'm thinking to myself, this brings up a lot of questions for me. Like, what does this guy think he's doing with these robots? And on the other side of that, is Bruce dressing these robots to look like villains? Or is that part of the thing he's ordering? He's like, I need 5 robots. One that looks like the Riddler, one that looks like Two-Face, and one that looks like Killer Croc. Don't ask me why. Definitely has nothing to do with me being Batman.
Yeah.
You know what?
The one that looks like Alfred's. Wait a minute. No, that would be weird.
Well, we learn in the next episode he's good at making tea, but maybe if he wasn't making tea, he would want an Alfred robot that could make him tea.
But he doesn't know that they're called trumpets or something like that.
Yes. Isn't that kind of what's missing from Batman Beyond, is having a robot Alfred?
His voice could be the voice of the computer, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like he's got an AI that controls the whole house. Like Alfred is his Siri or his Alexa. Alfred, tell me a racist joke. Alfred's like, I don't know any, sir.
Yes, I'm sure that would be the first thing he asked.
I mean, that's what we all do with Alexa, right?
Yeah, I'm sure. Definitely. So the Batcave apparently has a holodeck in it, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, I was surprised. I thought, well, if you have a holodeck technology that can make staircases in buildings that you're standing on, interacting with, why not just project your people too? It's
Great
basically
question.
the danger room, right?
Yeah.
But to go off of what you said before, so if Bruce is ordering basic robots to beat up, which are illegal, by the way. So Bruce Wayne is buying illegal objects, and then he's like dressing them up to look like Riddler and Clayface. But then when Steve Buscemi makes a custom sex robot for this kid, it comes fully dressed and it looks like a girl with red hair and blue eyes or whatever. So I guess Bruce was buying the baseline model and this kid was buying the custom model.
I guess, yeah. I couldn't track whether all of the robots, like the robots as a concept, were illegal, or if it was just the Steve Buscemi doing it on the side was illegal.
Yeah.
At the very least, what Buscemi was doing was illegal.
It makes more sense. I think it's better if Buscemi's staying after hours and selling off extra copies, and that's illegal. It's like unmonitored.
He was doing it apparently during business hours in the next room, so he's not really hiding it that much.
Wasn't it clever of him to make a version of himself? Because it's obviously at some point someone's going to come in and try to kill him.
Yes. But yeah, what did you think of this one overall?
I liked it. I thought that it had a good subplot. I liked the high school stuff. I feel like we've all known a kid who was in high school who was way overconfident, didn't have any fear of rejection, even though he knew he was kind of lame. Of going up to cool kids and be like, "Hey, brother, how you doing? Big, to do with my place after work. Haha, bring the keg, blah, blah, blah." Like, we always saw that kid who was kind of pathetic but fearless at the same time. Yeah. I liked him. I thought he was well designed, too.
Yeah, voiced by Max Brooks, son of Mel Brooks, who is now more well-known as an author, yeah.
I did not know that. I was going to Google him, and I forgot.
Yeah, World War Z, Zombie Survival Guide, among other things.
Wait, in real life? Is he in real life? Wait, he's playing these roles, or he's like a survival guide?
Oh, sorry. Max Brooks is the writer of World War Z and the Zombie Survival Guide.
Oh, okay. I thought he was like a prepper.
No, I don't think
off
so.
The grid. Okay.
No.
Not that we know of.
Yeah, I thought this one was okay. I thought the story that they were telling was ultimately fairly stock. Like it's very much a Weird Science type monkey's paw thing where, the guy wants a girl to love him, but obviously he gets more than he bargained for, that kind of thing. But I thought the way that they told it was pretty good, and it was fun.
I liked Terry locking Max into a boys' locker room and leaving her there. I thought that was actually pretty funny.
That was pretty good, yeah. Although hopefully nobody found her, because who knows what would have happened if they did.
Right. Well, in the future, there'll all be non-gendered bathrooms, so it shouldn't matter. And if
Yeah,
you
well,
complain, then you're racist.
that's a bunch of different things put together.
Oh, I know.
But yeah, I thought it was okay. I liked I wish they had pushed Cynthia going crazy at the end a bit further. Like, I was kind of hoping for more of a stripped down Terminator thing where like pieces started falling off of her and stuff.
Wow.
And
Yeah, I wanted a half face removal. Like when she came out of the TV, I would have gone full T2, you know?
right, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, you have the thing where it's like her half robot body is crawling after
Yeah.
Hank, or what it was, his name Hank? Howard.
Ooh, Howard, yeah. Yeah,
And just
Howard.
going like, love me, or whatever. That would be fun.
Howard looks like a George Jetson's character.
He
And
does, yeah.
I think a lot of the Batman Beyond designs are like one skip away from a George Jetson design. I kind of like that.
Yeah, I think I think that's probably a result of that being the show that a lot of these guys grew up on as far as like
Mm,
future goes.
yeah.
So it wouldn't surprise me if that look made its way in either on purpose or kind of subconsciously.
Yeah. Yeah. It's too bad they couldn't use the animation saving tactic of having everybody on moving sidewalks all the time, like in the Jetsons.
Mm-hmm. 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 It's funny in the trivia, this actually says Bruce Timm has stated on various audio commentaries that he admires the Buffyverse, and in Rebirth Part 1 commentary he said that he was asked to make Batman Beyond like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, which was very
Oh,
popular for WB at the time.
you
Curiously,
called
one
it.
year, yeah. Curiously, 1 year and 1 month after the airing of this episode, Buffy aired an episode with plot points similar to this one, in which a misfit creates an android girlfriend who also goes haywire at a party. I was going to mention that, but I couldn't remember exactly what the setup was. But yes.
Yeah. Yeah,
So yeah,
you're
I think
right.
that's part of it. Is it's just like it's it's fine. There's also another episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer where Buffy's mom starts
Mm,
dating John Ritter, and he's like this perfect boyfriend, and Buffy is very suspect of how perfect he is, and he also
yeah.
turns out to be a robot. So that was a pretty good one.
Oh, I didn't know Buffy dealt with robots. I thought she was mostly demons and stuff.
No, it's all over the place. Yeah, they do. They didn't do a ton of robots. Actually,
Yeah.
no, I guess they did later in the seasons. The robots that became a recurring plot point is robot doubles of people. So yeah, they get into all sorts of different stuff.
Yeah. I kind of want to see more episodes about the illegal distribution of Hardak. Like
Yeah,
anyone could be not who you think they are. And these
yeah.
things have almost like where the Picard series is now with the
Hmm.
changelings taking over and you can't trust anybody. I mean, I could see like a 2 episode um, arc of Batman sort of having to get to the bottom of this. Obviously, that's a lot more complicated episode than a high school drama, but
Hmm.
yeah, I just felt like there was a lot of meat on the bone there and good ideas, and like the idea of maybe an imposter Batman, which is kind of what we get into next episode.
Yeah, I'm surprised Hardak doesn't come back. I mean, I don't know
Yeah,
if it does later in the show, but it doesn't.
yeah,
It hasn't yet, because it does seem like that's something that makes sense to jump off of in the future with this advanced technology and stuff.
hmm yeah,
Yeah, I think we were actually in the early stages of Generation Joker. We were thinking about using Hardak, but we decided to change tack a little bit. But that was the one thing where we started talking about it, and I was like, Hardak, let's use Hardak, and it didn't end up making the final cut. But
yeah. When does issue 1 come out of that, by the way?
May, I think, so a
Okay,
couple months.
yeah. Wow, seems like it's been going on forever. Just
Yeah.
plotting and yeah. Normally, I'm in doing the art as well, and I guess it always takes a long time to make a comic book. But just me sort of like checking in on you guys every now and then, I'm always like, wow, this thing's still going on. Like, when are we getting to the last issue here? I'm
well,
totally not
even
aware of release dates. And
well, even with Red Hood, I had finished the scripts for Red Hood, I think. That book came out in April or May, or I think, of last year. Or no, it came out in like August or something. And I think I had finished the scripts early in the year, or possibly even before the year rolled over. And so that was one where I was surprised at how long the whole thing took to get from soup to nuts, as it were.
Yeah, it's nuts. I part of the fun of leaving DC for a while is I can make the books, take my time, and get them ready before I even announce them. And even if I started doing spin-offs or started writing projects for other people, I could just pay them up front and give them a reasonable schedule that artists deserve and not have to worry about making money until, you know, long, long after the fact.
Mm-hmm.
But comic publishers have fallen into this schedule where it's like, we need everything yesterday,
Right.
And they've been doing that for so long. And I don't know if it's just a cultural shift, if it's everyone's behind, is it because we have less editors taking on more work? Is it a lack of pay and motivation, or is the artist just slow? I mean, it's probably a mix of all that stuff. But like in theory, there's no reason why Marvel can say, or DC can say, hey, give us a ongoing series of 20 issues. We'll pay you right now. And when you're done, and when you're halfway finished, we'll start releasing them. That way you guys don't have to rush to finish it off.
Mm-hmm.
As long as you plan correctly and have the money saved up where you need it, why can't you run the company that way? But they're not doing it. Everything is needed yesterday. Yeah.
Did you feel like you had that pressure on you for White Knight Beyond?
Yeah. So my editor, my first editor who quit, she was Maggie, and she was really great at scheduling. And before she left, she really wanted to make sure that I had a fair schedule. And I'm always hopefully optimistic about my schedule. Like I always assume I can get 4 or 5 pages done a week, every week, no problem. And I forget that I need to like scan and adjust and redraw panels. So I always think I can bang it out by a certain date, inevitably. But I'm still pretty fast for what the job takes. Like no one ever accused me of being slow or lazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Maggie set me up with a schedule that gave me 2 months per book, and I thought that would be fine. And then she left, and then Brittany came on, and I just continued to work the schedule. Normally, I'd like to have 4 or 5 issues done and in the can before we announce. But DC decided to announce when we had like 3 issues in the can, which I was against. So that means that we've announced the launch date, which means you've inevitably announced the end date. 8 months later, the last issue should be out, right?
Right.
So when I started running into delays, like my computer broke, I had to get 2 to fix it or to replace it. And then I had to stop. I had to go to San Diego. I had to figure out why marketing was sort of dropping the ball at DC. So I calculated that I lost about a month and a half of time during the whole process, which is, an entire issue. I was late. I got COVID too, some stuff that was unavoidable. But anyway, yeah, so the last 2 issues were late basically. And it drove me crazy because I'm never late. And it happened this time. And I sort of blame the schedule. I don't know if I should have paid more attention when they asked me over and over, can we go sooner? Can we launch sooner? And I should have said, no, fuck you. But I joked around with Brittany. I said, man, if I do volume 4, I might just start working on it and not tell them. And then say, okay, let's sign it. Oh, by the way, here's 5 issues done and lettered and colored,
Right, yeah.
And I know that neuters them because they're supposed to have editorial control over things, and that's not how a company wants to be seen. But at the same time, I mean, they rarely run interference on what I want to do anyway. I don't need the money up front right now. I can wait to get paid, and I can just take my sweet ass time doing the book rather than deal with them forcing me to release earlier than I want,
Yeah. That'd be interesting. If the
here, book's done.
I would be,
if they knew, they would say, well, you've already drawn, we know you've been drawing the book, Sean, so your page rate is your page rate. We're not going to give you any more in your contract because we know that you need this to come out. So it's almost like tipping my hand a bit,
Right, yeah. They do kind of have you over a barrel a little bit at that point where they're like, oh, this is great. I'm sure you'd love to get paid for this someday.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, it depends on how much of dicks they want to be,
Right. Yeah.
So
You got
it's
to
just
start employing a Scotty from Star Trek kind of mentality, where it's like if you need 4 months, you tell them it's going to take 6, and then when
right.
you deliver it in 4.5, you look like a
Yeah.
champion.
How else are they going to think that you're a miracle worker? You know?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. But when I talked to Brittany, I said maybe I'll tell you what I want to do for volume 4. You say okay, but you don't tell anybody. You just keep it between us. I'll send you a script. You read it. You make your notes. You're not actually getting paid for this book yet, but when it's time to work on it, you'll have already done the work. So in theory, you're making the same money as the editor, and you're putting in the same amount of work. We're just shifting the schedule around.
Mm-hmm.
See if she But are they going to get pissed at her if she worked on a book secretly for 4 months and didn't tell them?
Yeah, I feel like there's got to be some middle ground there that
Yeah.
doesn't involve total clandestine operations.
Right. Yeah, or I can tell them, I can let them know I told a few people and they're aware that I was doing this. We didn't want to make it official. My reasons for doing this were I sort of lost a little faith in the company's scheduling abilities. So this is a DC problem, not a Sean problem.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand it's unorthodox, but at the same time, I can throw my weight around a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I'm excuse the arrogance. I'm Sean fucking Murphy. What are they gonna
Mm.
say? As long as like Batman
Put
doesn't
that on
start
a
murdering
t-shirt.
people. Yeah. Oh man. Hey, can you make me coffee too? Yeah, sorry. If you can hear the coffee
I'm
maker,
sorry. I'm
that's
just a podcast co-host. I can't make you a coffee.
damn it, Clay.
I know it smells
Uh,
good through the microphone, but
Yeah.
so this one, do you like this kind of episode? Because I feel like we've had one or two before that was more high school focused and less Batman specific focused. How do you?
Yeah.
I think this one sets up we were kind of talking about it a bit at the beginning. It sets up this weird sort of thing where as soon as you see Terry fighting classic Batman villains, you're like, yeah, okay, this is great. But then it also kind of pushes that aside to do this high school stuff where you're kind of like, okay, this is kind of cool too, where it's high school, but he's also Batman. So where do you come down on the more high school focused stuff?
You're right. We have had this theme for that's part of the having Peter Parker being trained by Bruce Wayne, which is kind of the idea of the whole series.
Mm-hmm.
You're gonna have to have a lot of kind of dorky high school stuff. Um, I don't know. I mean, if Bruce was really serious about making Batman effective, he would pick someone who's in their 20s, who's not in high school anymore.
Right.
Someone who can do this full time. Hello, like it doesn't make sense that you would endanger a 17-year-old.
Yeah. Well, he played the cards he was dealt, He wasn't
Right.
looking for a new Batman when Terry showed up.
Yeah, that's the sort of thread I was trying to weave and beyond was how do you explain away Bruce's inclusion of children?
Mm-hmm.
And the line I gave him was that Jason Todd kind of forced his hand by trying to steal the rims off the Batmobile. And he sort of gives Batman to people that go looking for it. And he
Mm-hmm.
doesn't want to deny them access in some ways. And that's just part of the deal. Like he could argue with himself and say, well, I'm not pushing this on anybody, but if they want it, I'm going to give it to them as long
Right.
as they follow these rules. So if Terry is that guy in the right place at the right time, yeah.
It would be interesting to see a story from the point of view of a Robin that portrays Batman as a bit more of a what's the phrase I'm looking for here? Like the way you're describing Batman as if they want it, I'm going to help them and give them what they want.
Yeah.
If you flip the point of view of that story, can be a little bit more mysterious and kind of foreboding in that sense when you've got this mystical creature almost type person in a mask who's saying to you, I know how angry you are and I can give you the tools to do what you need to do. Almost kind of like, Darth Vader talking to Luke Skywalker to a certain extent, being like, I know what you want, and if you follow me, I can give it to you. That kind of thing. That's kind of an interesting angle on it, because I mean,
right.
What happens when What happens when that goes wrong? What happens when Batman is like, I'll give you the tools that you need, and either he gets rejected or the person who takes him up on it goes in the complete different direction than what Batman wanted, which is, I guess, sort of what Azrael is a bit about.
I was just going to say that.
In the regular continuity. But
yeah, we're watching the show called You.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Okay, so it's on Netflix now, and it's about a guy who's a sociopath and probably serial killer. And you hear his inner monologue through most of it as he starts dating this girl. And the things that he's thinking is very much like things that you and I think. Thank you. And he's trying to date her through social media and blah, blah, blah. I would love a version of Batman and Robin, but from Robin's point of view, where he is the main character. Batman is the stranger, the unknowable. And I don't know, you start off at the circus and the tragedy of his parents' death. And then you've got this kind of weird guy who comes up to you and offers you, he wants to adopt you, and he shows you his secret. And I wonder what's going on in Robin's head for all this. Like, who is this guy? I like him, but I'm very suspicious. And what is going on? Like, some single millionaire can just take me in? Like, this doesn't seem right. And maybe he starts to sense, like, I think I'm being manipulated, but maybe I can manipulate him back. And he's right and wrong, and you kind of see the whole thing through Robin's. I think that'd be really amazing to do, actually.
Yeah, because you've got, like, usually this story is told more or less either from Batman's point of view or from a more omniscient narrator kind of point of view. And a lot of this middle ground is kind of glossed over to a certain extent. But it's like, what happens after Dick Grayson's parents get killed? And then, Batman shows up, and then Dick has to leave and go back to, like, the orphanage for a while. And then Batman shows up again. And then he's like, all right, what the fuck is this guy? Where is this guy coming from? And then he gets adopted, and he's in this new house with this guy who is going out at night and seemingly is never around, but then Batman is kind of around and kind of making things kind of enticing. It's like it does have a very sort of a really interesting kind of angle on it. That I don't know if it's been years and years since I read it, but I don't know if Frank Miller's All-Star Batman was trying to go that way a little bit. Because
I thought you were going to go Robin Year One. Sorry.
Oh, no. The All-Star Batman was heavily criticized for the way it portrayed Batman. That's where they have him saying, "I'm the goddamn Batman."
Right. And when he calls Robin retarded.
Yeah. And I had seen something talking about that book saying that, like, what he was trying to do was really emphasize how fucking weird Batman is as a concept, and how this kid is interacting with this guy who's going out and just, like, ultra violence on these criminals and stuff, and how that is very strange for a kid. They might be giving this book more credit than it's due, because A, it was never finished, and B, I don't think it did very well. But and I don't remember it really standing out to me. But, like, that idea of the whole Batman thing from the Robin standpoint, I do find very interesting. And maybe someone has done it and I just don't know. I would love to read it if they did.
Yeah. Talk about unusually, after all these years, some pretty fertile ground that hasn't been planted yet, right?
Yeah.
And you're not doing anything that everyone knows the story of Robin, but we never heard it from his side, really, from his side, in a way that's like you're in his head and you don't know really what Bruce is thinking, and you're suspicious of Bruce just like Robin is, Like, that doesn't need to be an Elseworld story at all. This could be mainline. Right,
What would be really actually kind of fun to do is do a mini series where every issue, just call it Robins, and every issue is the story of one of the Robins from this different point of view. And so you get to see how each one of them veers off differently. So you've got the first one is Dick Grayson, and you follow his trajectory up through becoming Nightwing, and it kind of ends on a positive note. And then you do Jason Todd, and you follow his trajectory where he takes things the wrong way and he ends up getting killed for it. And then you've got Tim Drake, who has a whole entirely different approach to Batman because he actually seeks Batman out. So I think that would be pretty fun.
I think you should call it Robin's Therapist. And it's a Batman hires a therapist to give all the Robins therapy, and one by one they come in, and this therapist is like hearing their stories, and he's like, "What the fuck is this child abuse?" And then he decides to get them all in the same room together, like an AA meeting of some kind.
Yeah,
And
that's not quite as fun. Group therapy, I don't know if is the way we want to go with this story, but
this would be a partial comedy, of course.
oh, I see. Okay.
Sort of like the that new Dracula movie with Nick Cage coming out.
Mm-hmm.
Reinhold or whatever, I can't remember what it's called.
Nicholas. Oh, Renfield.
Renfield, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they all have PTSD they're dealing with, and they finally decide to bring Bruce in, and this is not what Bruce thought would happen. He thought, you just fix these kids and send them back to work. But the therapist is like, actually, Bruce, you're going to have to do a little bit of heavy lifting here too, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
Teaching Batman the new phrases, like stuff that Batman think is pretty weak, like only pussies talk like that. But the therapist is making him use, like, you need to admit your feelings, you need to take a breath. If your voice goes above a 6, you need to stop and reassess. Like things that Batman would not be good at, you know?
Yeah.
I think honestly, Clay, you should pitch this Robin idea to DC. So I'd love to write a Robin story. It's like 4 issues. It's about meeting Batman for the first time, and don't make it a White Knight thing. Just make it a mainline thing. Like, I think you should pitch that.
Yeah, that would be fun. If I can, I'll try and focus it up into something and see if I can get somebody to look at it.
Yeah,
that seems.
Well,
to be
I love
the
how
trick.
I know your favorite thing in the world is when you and I talk about our new ideas publicly here, and then someone beats you to it.
Yeah. Yep. Loving that.
Like the wrestling thing for Bane.
Yeah. Anybody who wanted to see Bane as a luchador wrestler, don't hold your breath because somebody just did it. So, and the thing that killed me about it. So okay.
Go ahead.
So here's the thing.
Why don't you explain more? Explain more what you're talking about for people that don't know.
Well, I don't know. I don't want to run anybody down for this because obviously it's a matter of extreme coincidence. But it was this long running Bane thing that I had kind of had in the back of my mind had one very specific element baked into it, which is that the lead up to it is that Bane is the only guy who knows that Bruce Wayne is Batman, right? And so what Bruce Wayne does in order to get him out of Gotham is he uses his connections as Bruce Wayne, freezes all of Bane's assets, and gets him deported to Mexico. And so he's stuck out of the country. He can't get back in. I know he's Bane. He's the supervillain. Just roll with me here. And so eventually Bruce gets called down to Mexico to meet up with Bane, and the place that he is sent to is this. He walks in, and it's this big, crazy crowd going nuts over this wrestling match. And what Bruce walks into is he sees Bane in the ring, giant, muscly Bane fighting a smaller, scrawnier wrestler who's dressed like Batman. And what he's doing is every night Bane is reliving the breaking of Batman in the wrestling ring. And Bruce is really unnerved because the whole crowd is loving the fact that Bane is breaking Batman's back every night. And so that was like the lead-in for this thing. And then I picked up that Bane book, and it the first 3 pages are that exact same idea. The fact that Bane is a professional wrestler in Mexico who is fighting a Batman wrestler and running through the breaking of Batman in the form of a wrestling match. And I was like, there's this idea that, there's no idea that is so unique that somebody else doesn't have it. It's just who gets there first. Sure, I totally understand that. This was so specific.
Yeah.
This is kind of thing has happened to me a bunch of times where it's like, okay, that's really close. I should probably adjust some stuff, blah, blah, blah. This was the exact same thing, and I could not believe it.
I thought that you were upset because they took Bane as wrestler, which I think has been done before, and that's on the tip of everyone's tongue anyway. Right, yeah. Bane wrestler, it's already in the zeitgeist.
Sure.
But I didn't know, and you're right to be this annoyed because that is pretty fucking close.
I'm not annoyed that it's out there as an idea because I think it's a cool idea. I could not believe how exact it was. It's never been that close where it's like these specific details all lined up in the same way, and that was just it. I just couldn't believe it. So I'm got I don't want to blow anything for Generation Joker, but we almost used that idea in Generation Joker. We kind of tweaked it a bit. So you might see something that is similar to that in Generation Joker. And now I'm kind of happy we tweaked it the way we did, because otherwise it would have looked like we were just kind of copying this other thing. So
Right. It's funny. I there's a few ideas I want to do, and I know they're close to ideas that friends of mine have done. Like, I want to do this book called The Last Driver. And in this idea, I think the only guy that actually knows how to drive a car, because in the future everyone is being driven around in these like wimpy Google pods, and then that's controlled by the city, a giant megalopolis, like Demolition Man style, or Judge Dredd, and it's called the Grid. And GRID, it would be an acronym for something, I don't know. And then you told me that Rick Remender used the Grid idea in his image book with Bengal.
I don't
so
know
I'm debating.
I don't think that's that. No, that wasn't it. That wasn't there was overlap and other stuff, but the Grid as a concept I don't think is in that book.
Okay, well, that's a relief, because I was like, man, do I tell Rick? I mean, Rick's not going to read it anyway. He doesn't like them doing Batman. He wishes I was more punk rock like him, and whatever.
I started reading that book, and I don't think the overlap was as big as I thought it was going to be. So I think you're fine.
Good. Thank you. All right. Well, that's one.
I mean, it's a weird thing when you're in this creative profession, where if you've got, let's say speaking about Batman, right? You've got you and I are two of, I don't know, 100, 150 people who at any one time are trying to think up Batman stories. There's going to be some form of overlap in some sense. It's just statistically impossible for it not to happen.
Right.
And so it's just, it's frustrating when it does happen, but it's a hazard of the profession, I suppose.
Yeah. I also had you and I are working on a story that's similar to, the title and the theme is a little similar to the Daniel Warren Johnson book. What's it called? That image book. It's like Rock and Roll Rooster. Or,
Murder Falcon.
Murder Falcon. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, it has the same vibe. But I'm like, what a good way around this would be is get Daniel Warren Johnson to do a variant cover, because clearly he's now included, and no one's going to accuse me of getting near his idea or whatever.
Right.
Daniel's a chill guy. I don't think he would ever accuse me of that. But when that book did come out, I was like, ooh, we should pause work on this, because if that thing takes off, then this is. I don't want to be accused of, trying to swipe from him in any way,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I was running into that problem with the book I'm working on now, the wrestling book that I'm doing with Ricardo, where also Daniel again put out this wrestling book that's fucking amazing.
Right.
And after when I read the first issue, I was like, okay, well, I got to change some stuff now, which is fine.
Yeah.
But it's just a hazard of the business. Is good ideas are good ideas, and some people get to them quicker than others. Daniel's book is amazing, but you should read it, by the way.
Yeah. So the interesting thing, though, is it's never as clear of a connection as the creator thinks.
Yes.
It's way worse in your head than how people are going to interpret it.
Except the Bane thing. The Bane thing is exact, but everything else...
that's fair.
Everything else is usually worse for the creator who's thinking it,
Most of the time, people don't notice, like you will. For example, I was reading Cliff Chang's book, Catwoman, Black Label. And people warned me a year ago, like, there's a few Batman books where the cops, it's about the police, basically. And after George Floyd, I was like, well, mine is going to be about good cops and bad cops. I'm sure everyone else is going to do all cops are evil, because that's where Twitter was at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So they said, oh, Cliff is working on this and someone's working on that. Is that okay? And I'm like, I've been gearing up to do a GCPD type of GTO thing for a while, so I'm not going to change my plans. And I didn't worry about what Cliff was doing. And then when I saw a preview, he's got like aged up Catwoman coming back into, so got old hero back in action. He's got villain as politician. He's got cops literally dressed in bat helmets with pointy ears. And he's got even like a Batman Devastation Fund idea reworked. So I know Cliff. I like Cliff. I don't think he did that on purpose. But I remember reading it thinking, like, really? Nobody stopped this? Like, nobody told him, like, hey, Cliff, maybe veer a little to the left because Sean already did this.
Hmm.
So I'm like, where is quality control in this matter? So I was annoyed, not at Cliff. I was just annoyed at comics. Um,
Yeah.
and
They
then,
kind of they
so
kind of got in. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but they kind of. I
sure.
remember when they were doing the future state stuff.
Yeah.
The story they were telling in Batman that I dipped in on from time to time also involved like Batman cops working with advanced Batman technology and stuff. So it was kind of like in the zeitgeist for whatever reason when
For sure.
all of these
Yeah.
books were happening.
Yeah. And even the Lego movie with Batman talked about,
Oh yeah, I
Batman,
remember
if you want to be a help, put on a, yeah.
Yeah, I remember you
So
being really mad about that one.
I was worried when mine came out, everyone would say Sean Murphy ripped off Cliff Chang. And nobody said that. Not
Hmm.
even in any comment on any YouTube video, anything I've ever seen, nobody put it together. And if I read both, I'd be like, one of these guys copied the other, clearly. But
Right.
that's
Yeah.
just me. Maybe too intense or something. But yeah, all that worry about Cliff's book and nothing. So
Yeah.
whatever.
Well,
I don't think.
it's funny because I read that book, which I really liked, but I did
Yeah.
come away going like, well, I mean, I don't really know if there's any point in trying to get White Knight Catwoman done now because it's kind of
Yeah.
playing in the same. It wouldn't have been the same story, obviously, but it's kind of
Yeah.
playing in the same sandbox up to the
Yeah.
fact that it's an older Catwoman in the
Yeah.
future with bat cops and stuff. And I was like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not worth
Yeah.
it to try and do anymore.
Not for now, but I still want to return for a Batman Catwoman miniseries. Not an 8-issue thing, but
Yeah.
something smaller. And I'd like to get into like flashbacks of the old Gotham, traditional Batman, because people love that stuff, obviously.
Hmm.
I'm not really worried. And I think because you've helped me build this entire new universe, I mean, we're so far off the grid. I was going to say off the reservation, but I know we're not supposed to say that anymore. We're so far away from mainline continuity that we can sort of do whatever we want. Like no one
Right.
is going to catch up to us, even if we do have a similar idea. It's framed. The context of White Knight is so different that
Right. Yeah.
we're fine. Like we ended up in a really really great position with any idea that we want to do. I mean, Jesus Christ, I have old man Batman about to fight 20-year-old Superman, and
Yeah.
it's like how the hell did we end up here? It's such a weird thing that we built slowly. I wish we could say it was all planned from the beginning, but it wasn't.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So I kind of don't worry about that stuff in some sense now.
Yeah. Yeah. It's.
But I can see why you would, because if you're going to be pitching DC, it's not a White Knight book, then that is something that should be more on your radar than mine.
Yeah, and I think it's the kind of thing too where it's like if you are more in my position where I'm trying to make a backlog of things that I would like to do to whatever my next project is going to be. Every
Yeah.
time something like this happens, it's like, okay, well, that I got to take that one off the board or
Hmm.
really revamp it. And the last month or so, man, it happened like 3 times. To a point that I was like, I don't know if I can do these ideas anymore because of how similar these other things were. I won't go into what they were, but it was
Yeah.
just one of those moments where I had to take a step back and go like, okay, well.
Hmm.
And one of them I had just brought to another publisher
Yeah.
who was kind of interested in it. And after I sent it to them, this other thing got announced. And so when I was talking to this editor, I was like, listen, I just want to let you know this other thing is coming out that has a lot of similarities. I don't know if that's going to influence whether or not you want to do this or whatever. And he's like, okay, I hadn't heard that. I'll check it out. And since then I've talked to him about it and he didn't seem concerned. So,
Yeah.
But also, I mean, at the same time, the biggest one for me was when Wonder Woman came out.
Yeah.
I was in the middle of plotting out bloody hell, and Wonder Woman came out with 3. It takes place in World War I. This god type character that ends up in the trenches, and she had these 3 side characters that were exactly the same as the 3 side characters I had written into my book. So there was a Scottish guy, an Indian guy, and there was a Native American in the movie, and I didn't have that guy in my book. But the Scottish guy and the Indian guy were these side characters in my book, and I was like, okay, well, back to and like the climax was very similar to what I had worked into Bloody Hell at that time. And so I went back to the drawing board and I changed it, and I think I made it better. I think it was for the better.
Yeah.
I had to kind of go back to this and readjust it because it made me think like, okay, well, if these things are happening in this movie, maybe this isn't as original as I thought. How can I approach this differently? Keep the same themes and keep the same intention, but do it in a bit of a different way.
Yeah. We should get on to talking about the next episode.
Yes, we should.
Story. I was at a convention at a bar once, and there was this other writer there who I don't really like this guy, and he was talking about an idea he was thinking about doing, and I think my impression was he was sort of using an idea I had and taking his own spin on it, and I said, well, I'm kind of going to do that myself, and he basically implied, well, I guess we'll see who gets there first.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, all right, motherfucker. Well, I'll just go back to my hotel, draw it, send it to my editor, and boom, I own it first because I know the artist pretty goddamn well. Whereas he has to write a pitch, send it in, have a meeting, have it approved, blah, 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 and then, get the artist to draw it and find the artist and blah. So he's got a delay inevitably, whereas I can just do it like now and grab it. And I basically thanked him on that because he was a bit of a dick to me.
Nice.
So I was like, fuck it, I'll just sketch it right now and send it in, and then I'll just tell everybody, yeah, so and so is going to do something similar. It kind of makes me uncomfortable, and they sort of made him take a left turn. His book still did fine, but he hasn't come at me since, so whatever.
All right, once we're done here, I'm going to need to know the full extent of that story. But
okay, sure.
Was there anything you'd like to draw from this episode?
Terry hanging out near the Bruce Wayne's car, that looked really cool. Seeing that the Batmobile flipped upside down and him just hanging out by it, that'd be a pretty cool poster. Not a lot of story there, but I don't know, just a neat image. How about you?
Yeah, I think I'd like to do the Cynthia having her meltdown at the party. I think I wanted that would be fun and push it a little bit further into some more like Terminator territory. Would be a lot of fun. One other little bit of trivia is when Howard's dad shows up at the end. Very recognizable voice. That's Dan Castellaneta, Homer Simpson, doing the voice of his dad. Yeah.
Was the design, because he wore this interesting hat, and I thought maybe this is supposed to be a wink to another character from the 70s or something.
Oh, I don't know. I didn't notice specifically.
Yeah, okay. Not an Archie Bunker, but some kind of character that only the animators know of. But anyway, interesting.
Yeah, they
should have him go like "ooh" or "dope" or something like that. Do you think The Simpsons owns "dope"?
Probably. Yeah, there is a specific spelling of it, and I would be surprised if they didn't have that trademarked.
Yeah, D dash OH or apostrophe OH.
Yeah. The funny thing about that is the way that they write that in the script, or at least the way they used to. They don't write doe, they write annoyed grunt. And so there was an episode title that was a riff on E-I-E-I-O, like the rhyme there. And it was supposed to be E-I-E-I-Do, but the title of the script is actually E-I-E-I annoyed grunt, which I find very funny. Anyway. Okay. So that's going to do it for Terry's friend. We should rate it. Yeah.
I'm a high 3 or a low 4. I think I like this one a little bit more than you did.
Yeah, I'll give it a 3. I think it's solid.
Okay.
But I guess it's just kind of an idea I've seen a bunch of times before, so it didn't really thrill me that much. Although the Steve Buscemi guy was fun. Part of me was kind of hoping that when the classic villains showed up at the beginning, they would be redesigned yet again, and then maybe Terry would have to ask Bruce. Like I in my head, I'm like, that would be really funny because then you have to assume that Bruce adjusted these designs himself. So is this like this new version of Two-Face what he thinks Two-Face would look like in 2025 or whenever?
There's a brand manager joke here.
Yeah.
I can't think of what it would be.
There's a reason they pay someone to do this for them.
Yeah. Without the brand manager, Bruce has to redesign everything himself.
Yeah.
Anyway.
But yeah, a couple of 3s, high 3 from Sean, regular 3 from me. That's going to do it for Terry's Friend Dates a Robot. We'll take a quick break and be back with Eyewitness.
Finally, an end to the bureaucratic nightmare. No more craft! No more payoffs! No more jury duty!
Wonder what he's so happy about.
All right, Eyewitness. Story by Rich Fogel, teleplay by Hilary J. Bader, directed by Butch Lukic. I'm never going to get that name right. And in this one, when Commissioner Barbara Gordon witnesses Batman killing an opponent in cold blood, Terry finds himself on the run from the law as he tries to discover the real culprit and prove his innocence. I was legitimately worried that they actually killed off Mad Stan, and I'm really happy they did not kill off Mad Stan.
So we're building a pretty good swelling up to Mad Stan, because we haven't had the Mad Stan episode yet, have we? But this is the second time that we're gearing this guy, and there isn't a whole lot to Mad Stan.
Yeah, I thought he was pretty good too. Like in this episode, the fight that he had, like I think that one of the things I might want to draw is the fight with Mad Stan, where he's just throwing rockets at him and shit. That was pretty fun.
I love it. I mean, obviously, I'm a massive Henry Rollins fan. I like it. Used to annoy me how unconvincing it was when Mad Stan would say like, "Hey man, you got to check out the blah blah blah, like corporation capitalism. Hey man," the way he said "man" didn't sound like his heart was into it. And I know Henry knows how to shout that word, but Henry would probably say, "I'm not an actor. I did the best I could,"
Yeah.
But I'm curious, like, did they let Henry write his own dialogue a bit and tweak it to make it his own? Or for that matter, who said, "Hey, I know who we need for this character. Actually, let's even design it after him." You know who's really hot right now? The liar guy, Henry Rollins.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that was, I think we may have talked about this a little bit, but that's what, 99, 2000? So he's been in stuff. He was in Heat. He was in, was he in Bad Boys 2? I think Bad Boys 2 is a couple years after this, but so he's out there as an actor.
Yeah, the Liar video is a big thing in like 95, 96. He was an MTV commenter VJ. He was sort of like Dee Snider for a while because he was well spoken. So you need a rock guy who can show up on time and say something kind of clever and leave. That's Henry. And then you're right. He had a few things here and there. And then Bad Boys 2 and Heat.
Man.
Yeah.
Two all-time greats. What a great sandwich.
Yeah.
Bad Boys 2 on one end, Heat on the other, Mad Stan in the middle. That's a sandwich I want to eat.
He's typecast, but I love him. I loved this episode. I thought it looked really great. The animation. There's a bit where Terry is walking around in a hallway, and he sort of steps forward and back and kind of trips a little bit. It's a moment where I'm like, man, there must have been like 7 different cells to catch that. Like, there's something about the small things that they really paid attention to. I think this was the studio that they hired to do the Return of the Joker movie because it looks that good. And knowing what you're saying about this is the first time they use digital coloring or whatever, it makes sense that they would really want to make this a 10 just to proof like, okay, this is the best it can look. We know we made the right decision. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a good point. I hadn't thought about that, but yeah, it's if this is the first one out of the gate, they really have to prove that this is the way to go. Yeah.
Yeah. And if you don't, I read the description of the episode first, and I accidentally, so I saw Spellbinder, so I didn't ever think that Terry actually did these things. And I wish I didn't see that because I would have gone in like, man, what the hell is going on? Like, I thought it was really good.
So it looks like the animation, the company that did the animation, they didn't do Return of the Joker, but they did do Batman Sub-Zero.
Okay.
Which is another one.
The number 2.
Yeah.
And that was all traditional.
No, I think that was digital, or at least part of it was, because remember that's the one that has like the 360 camera moves around the car and stuff.
I think they did a mix because there's a few CGI shots that they clearly were like, let's spend the money here, but most of it looked pretty traditional TOS. Yeah. But it could be wrong. But yeah, regardless, like that was the movie that had that great Dutch angle where they're running away from Freeze's blast and all that. Yeah, really well animated movie, but more rounder. They hadn't really developed the season 4 style yet, which is really streamlined and pointy.
Yeah.
Which led them to Beyond style. But yeah.
Yeah, I
Really
found
great.
this one to be pretty engaging, and I actually was thinking like, man, this would be a great. I feel like it's too short. I feel like it would be a great 3 or 4
I
issue
agree.
comic, or they could have even done this as a movie. Because if your conceit is that now you've got Barbara Gordon on the hunt for Batman, like that's a pretty, and like even Bruce is kind of it's unclear what his stance is on Terry. I think it's got a lot of potential there.
I would have made it a two episode at least.
Yeah.
I'd push for 3 or 4 and have it be like a mini movie, like you said. You're finally getting Barbara really weighing in on how she feels about all of this stuff. She talks about having looked into Terry and this kid's got a spotty past and Bruce, whatever. Like there's so much there that I want to see more time with those ideas. And then, even after the fallout, like I get that Terry exposed Spellbinder. He tackled him and he saved Barbara and the cops' lives. But he also assaulted officers, attempted murder. If I was a lawyer, shooting batarangs at cops is attempted murder. Period. Stealing a police cars, smashing into police cars, endangering citizens. Like, I get that he saved her life at the end, but I think they would still have to arrest him. Honestly, you know?
Well, we've kind of had a running joke on the show is that Terry has really come close right up to the line of killing a lot of people in this show.
Yeah. And they shoot him off a building, and they're like, man, why didn't they just use a net gun? But they actually blast him, and he falls 100 stories or whatever.
Yeah, and in this one, even though he doesn't actually kill Mad Stan, he does steal that cop spinner car and then smash into 2 other ones, and both of those things go crashing down. So who knows what happened to the pilots in those if there were any.
Like, I would have loved if the episode 2 of this was Barbara says, okay, kid, I know that you're a good guy and you're not, but I am the commissioner and my husband is running for re-election. You are still an enemy of the police. You need to run. He needs to figure out a way to like settle all of this stuff. Because you've got the DA, like, or maybe her husband is being forced to like press charges and to lead an investigation to who Batman is. And he thinks that he thinks she knows who, Batman really is, and he's leaning on her, so it's affecting her marriage. Like, man, there's so much you could get into. It could be like a 12-issue series, for Christ's sakes.
Yeah.
And to have it only go over 22 minutes or whatever is kind of it's a missed opportunity. But I'm still going 5 on this episode.
Yeah. I think they did a really nice job setting up what was going to come by having that scene where Barbara talks to Bruce and says, like, I looked at his record. This kid has been cited multiple times for like assault and all these other kind of things, like setting up this idea that maybe Terry would push it too far, and that because that goes a long way to making what comes after that plausible. As far as I still, I don't ever really believe that Terry is just going to kill somebody in cold blood like that, but I think it makes it for the story believable from Barbara's perspective that he might.
Yeah. Even if she doesn't believe it, she has to assume that because that's her job. And there's a lot of pressure on her to figure this out,
And kind of what she's talking about too is sort of another angle of this Batman and Robin from Robin's point of view kind of story, which is like, who is these? Bruce Wayne doesn't know who these kids are that he's giving all this power to. It's like it's an orphan with a chip on his shoulder, and I'm teaching him how to kill people. Essentially, like that's the essentially the Jason Todd version, where it's like, I guess I misjudged this kid, and he went in a direction that I didn't expect him to.
Yeah, I'm teaching you to kill 99% of the way, but you're gonna have to pull back at the very end because obviously we're not here to kill.
Right.
You know? It seems like a loaded weapon ready to go off.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, I would love to have seen this to be a bit longer, but I do think they do a really good job as it stands. It also it made me think they have one of my favorite things in all of sci-fi, but just in general when they do this, which is when Bruce looks at a photo and he sees something in the background and he does the enhance, and it enhances the photo. And it always enhances it at full resolution. And it made me think. Since with the advancement of AI image technology, does the AI image technology make this enhanced thing a a realistic possibility now. Could you take something in the back that's out of focus and distorted and run it through an AI thing and say enhance, and then have it actually
They've been doing that. They've been
enhance
doing
it
that for
correctly?
years. Yeah, they've had that for a while. I think
Like
even
in
the
real
modeler.
life?
Yeah, they run. They're called fractal algorithms. Um, it's hard to describe, but it's like this a bunch of numbers in a square, and it's set up as a math problem. They're called
Mm-hmm.
fractals, and if you visualize a fractal, it's like zooming in infinity on these patterns. Like you've probably seen these like trippy patterns that are pixelated of like this is what fractals look like if we visualize them. They use fractal technology to go in and essentially what you're describing. I believe they can do this, like not perfectly, but the computer can guess, like, all right, I can't see this person's eye, but I know on average most eyes are in the middle of the shadow in the face and this and that, and it can pick up on other clues to enhance it a little bit. I believe we have this already, and I think it uses fractal technology.
What about the one that they do sometimes where they change the angle of the shot?
Yeah,
So
we
it's
can't do
like
that.
they zoom in
Well,
and then they
hold
go
on.
rotate 18 degrees, and then they take this
Yeah.
static photograph and then turn it
Yeah.
and create imagery that you could not
Yeah.
possibly know was there.
Well, I think we can kind of do that because if you're like, for example, they're inside a garage, so a computer has a model for big cement pillars in cars.
Mhm.
It can judge how large the figure is, so you could get a decent 3D, like show me it from 3 feet away. But as far as like what it looks like behind the pillar, we'd probably have to guess.
Yeah, I'm
Didn't they
talking
do
like
this
the
in
thing.
Next
talk-
Next Generation? They did this, I
Oh,
think.
I'm sure. Yeah, they definitely do. Yes, there is
Yeah,
definitely
when
like a
Jory was a frogman, they needed to recreate the scene of the crime using the
yes.
holodeck.
That's what
Yeah.
I'm talking about. Doing the thing where it's like the picture that they have is they
Yeah.
see an arm coming out from behind a wall shooting a phaser, and then they go
Right.
rotate 18 degrees, and the image rotates, and you see who is behind the pillar, which is like there's no possible way you could ever know that for sure. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
maybe
I've been
someday.
using the word, I've been looking up the word fractal. I don't think that's the right word. So here I am pretending I know something about math, but I don't. Shit. Well, now it's going to bug me. I'll probably correct myself next podcast, but
What did you? How did you feel about the reveal of where Mad Stan actually was in this VR VR simulation where he just gets to blow up government buildings?
kind of a red flag. The FBI might want to keep an eye on him. But I like that they're setting him up as this guy is definitely coming back for some more fun. you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, I found it. It was nice that he was alive, but it was also kind of dystopic, a bit to be like, yeah, we've just got him strapped into this VR machine where he's just laughing and drooling like an idiot. But
Right.
what I thought the reveal was going to be is I thought they were going to pull back and reveal that he was working for a construction company, and that
Right.
he was just in charge of demolishing buildings.
Right.
You know, so he's like going off about no more banks, no more paying late fees at this bank, and then they were gonna like pull back, and it said condemned under whatever
Right.
Gotham City, whatever, and he was the guy. But you know, VR works too.
Right. All right. So it is fractals. I'm correct in using that because Arthur C. Clarke was talking about this once and crossed over into my sci-fi brain. That's why I knew this term. But anyway, I'm standing behind it.
Okay.
It's probably some like FBI guy listening. You're like, fuck that. We don't have that technology. This kid's out of his mind.
You know, I did when I was in college. I took a screenwriting class, and the professor, a friend of his, was his job. He worked in movies and TV, and his job was creating the digital and computer programs that you see in movies or TV shows for like CSI or
Yeah.
something, where they put their information in and then they show you the computer. And he was in charge of like designing all that stuff.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, it never occurred to me that someone actually had to like create that
Yeah.
stuff. And so
Yeah.
I was like, wait a minute. You're telling me that the facial recognition stuff that they use in movies isn't real? And he's like, no, of course it's not real. Like, okay, well.
Wait a
all
minute.
right.
They have facial recognition software that they use, right?
I mean, now, yeah, but I'm talking like this was 20 years ago. And and the
yeah.
stuff in my head was stuff from even before that, where it's like
Right.
a movie in 1999 is using retina scan technology or facial recognition shit,
Got
or
it.
you know, the stuff that was advanced at that time.
Yeah, yeah. You know,
But,
on the cottage I have in New Hampshire, where you and I were writing Zorro.
Hmm.
I have a door that you press my thumb to the middle of it, and it recognizes my thumbprint and it opens up. So it's Back to the Future 2, which I think is pretty awesome.
Nice.
I would rather have the hoverboard, of course, or even the sneakers, but I'll take a door. Take
You
a
gotta-
door unlock.
You got to program your Alexa when you do that to do the thing and from Back to the Future 2 when it's like, "Welcome home, King of the Castle."
Oh,
So
man.
what would you're going to give this one a 5?
Yeah, again, that's a Beyond 5, not a TOS 5.
Yeah, I
What
would
about you?
agree. I think this is probably a Beyond 5 because there's still, it's just like the amount of time that they have to work with kneecaps it a bit. But
Yeah.
as far as these shows for the episodes for this show have gone, this is probably one of the better ones we've seen. So I
Yeah.
would agree with that. I would say it's a
Yeah.
Beyond 5.
And I would draw Mad Stan. I actually
Mhm.
drew Henry Rollins into a book I did a long time ago called Off Road, where he was a cop, and it was because I had just watched The Chase with Charlie
Oh
Sheen,
yeah, yep.
and Henry was pretty wild in that. Definitely ad-libbing a lot, and yeah, I drew his little chin dimple and his intense thick neck and all that. So
Nice.
yeah, if I ever meet him, I'm gonna. Well, I don't know if I'll bring that up. Remember
Charge
when
him-
you used to be
we'll
really
charge you
muscular?
money.
I drew that. Yeah. How about you?
I would want to draw the fight with Mad Stan,
Yeah.
where he's just hurling bombs at him like he's a Mega Man villain. That was pretty fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's gonna do it for what's this called? Eyewitness. We didn't even really
Yep.
talk about the villain, but I mean it's such a little bit at the end that it's like, yeah,
Yeah.
okay, fine, sure, whatever.
Yeah, they could use improving too. Like, what exactly was his stake in all this? But there's so many other ideas they spend time on where it's fine.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
again, if they made this into more of a three-parter, then you could get into Spellbinder and whatever. I don't even
Yeah.
know what he looks like, honestly. Like, have we ever seen him remove his mask?
I don't know. I don't think so. I can't remember. He's been in 2 or 3 episodes, I think, but I can't remember if they've shown him without a mask on.
Spellbinder, Batman Beyond. Well, he is a character that DC already owns. He looks like a Silver Age character.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see anything where his face is revealed. At least on a quick Google search. So, oh no, there's one. Yeah, he's like a nerdy guy with glasses. Nothing too.
Yeah, that tracks.
Oh no, okay, we do see his face. Yep, he's got like a dumb bowl cut and
Do
just
you
a
know
white
what
guy. Yeah.
what episode it is? Does it say?
S- Batman Beyond Spellbound, IMDb, clicking. Again, I know that everyone loves when they can listen to us Google things.
Enhance.
Uh,
Enhance.
Exactly. It's got a bunch of photos from the Wikipedia page on it, but
If it's from Spellbound, I think that's a season 1 episode. I think we already did that one.
yeah, all cast and crew. I'm not going to find it in the next minute, so we probably know what his face looks like. I don't remember the name of the episode, though.
Yeah, Spellbound was in the first season. That was the first episode. It wouldn't surprise me if we see his face. in that
Oh,
one.
you're right. It is Spellbound.
Yeah.
I read it as Spellbinder. And that's what you get for speed reading. All right,
so get into Zorro and
Man. So I remember when I started Batman Beyond the White Knight, I texted everybody in our thread. It's like, man, I don't know how to draw anymore. Just fucking Batman. Like, I look at my old stuff, and sometimes I look at my old stuff and I'm like, "Ugh, this sucks. I want to redo it.
Mhm.
Sometimes I go, man, this is awesome. How did I do that? And I remember complaining to you guys that I think I forgot how to draw, and you guys were all like, fuck you, you're gonna figure it out. Like, come on. And of course you were right. And I hit that again with Zorro, and I think what happens is
and you kept it to yourself like a man.
I tried to, yeah. And I vented a little bit to Corinne, and I leaked it here and there, but I was trying. The short story is I push through for 5 or 6 pages, and then I find my feet. So
Yeah.
I'm through it. But in the moment where I'm like, oh, how does my Zorro look? I've been drawing Batman, who's wearing black on black. You'd think I'd be able to just put a sword in his hand and give him a hat,
Mm-hmm.
But then I was exclusively looking at Alex Toth Zorro, and I find that Toth has one of those styles where if you start to study it, it starts to take over.
Sure, yeah.
And not all styles are like this, but I find that if you study Mignola, it's just going to take over. Toth is the same way. The exaggerated, cartoony faces, the simple line work. Mike's stuff is pretty simple too, so maybe that's the thread. Because Mike only uses 10 lines, where Mark Textera would use 100 lines.
Right. Yeah.
If you're gonna start looking at Mike's stuff, those 10 lines are gonna get in your head. Whereas if you're looking at a Sienkiewicz, you can use a lot of lines and it might not look like his. Maybe that's what I don't know. I haven't really given that a lot of thought yet.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I'm like, man, I feel like Zorro is Toth's character in a way. Like, again, if I was drawing Hellboy, I would be thinking I need to take the best of Mike and jam it with my own style, so it's familiar but unique. It still has a Murphy flavor in there,
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. It was hard. I think I didn't do enough sketching and just playing around on scrap paper. I think I tried to dive into the pages too quickly. I hadn't really thought about the black rendering pattern to use on Zorro, meaning what does his sash look like? What are his gloves shiny? Because you have black sash, black boots, black tights. Are his tights always black? Do they glow at all when the sun hits them? And I'm going to be using Zipatone too to really make this look old school.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to leave some white spaces, stuff like that. Um, it's like 100 little decisions that I thought I had settled on, and I started drawing, and I'm like, man, I don't think I've really gave us enough time yet.
Mm-hmm.
So I just kept pushing forward. I'm like, don't look back. Don't look at the older panels. Like, they're just going to piss you off, and I'd rather start this project on a good note. So after 6 pages, I started to find my feet. And I went back and I fixed all the other panels. So I've got 7 pages done and they're all tight and I'm happy with them. But what I also had to do is get rid of what I was trying to do that was too much Toth, because I'm I'm myself, and people buy my art because of my look. Some people have said, "Who cares about Toth? You're way better than him," which I don't think I would agree with. But in this process, you're really it's forced me to study Toth in a way that I never have. It's one thing to crack his book open, to glance at it for 10 minutes when you're on the toilet and put it down, but it's another to like sit with it and be like, all right, he drew this guy this way, these eyebrows, this nose. He was really heavy on this cheekbone shadow. Like, I don't know if I like that. And I went from realizing Toth is perfect to Toth is uh, really good, but he's got some stinkers. He's got some bad panels, just like we all do, because Toth is human, right? Um, and the other part of this is when you Google Toth, you'll start to see he like hand wrote little lessons to friends of his, or I don't know,
Mm.
people. Yeah, so he did a little, and he had really great handwriting too. And I don't know if he used a ruler, but it's amazing how he was able to write, all caps, of course. And he would write these like really interesting run-on sentences that were actually very well thought out. Uh, I don't know if it was stream of thought or whatever, but it was incredible. And but he also sounded like kind of a prick, honestly. And he wrote some that were like basically attacking image artists. Was
Mm-hmm.
What's wrong with one line? A single line conveys all this information. Why cover it up with all this cross hatching and bullshit and blah blah blah? And it sounded like a guy I wouldn't really want to hang out with, honestly, like a nasty, curmudgeonly old man. Which, if you've read up on Toth, that's probably not too far off. I'm sure he had good days and bad days,
Yeah.
whatever it is, right? Um, so and there's one letter that he wrote where he was saying, just draw the face. Stop with drawing a circle first. Don't draw the grid where the eyes are. Don't do the cross where the nose is supposed to be. Stop measuring. Just draw the face. And I would say to him, well, fuck you, Toth, because your brain has a good map of where eyes and noses and mouths go. But some people need to draw the measure it out first.
Yeah.
And that's okay. Like, just because your brain measures it out automatically, like, good for you. You're awesome at faces. But some people aren't. And if he was alive, I would definitely push back on some of his things. So yeah, I don't know. What do you think about all that?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's amazing. I do think that I think his I've seen some of those things that he's written. There's a famous one where I think it's a note that he wrote to Steve Rude, where he basically just like tears apart this page that he had done for some book or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I think those things are you can learn from you can learn amazing things from someone like him who's doing that sort of breakdown. But yeah, there is a certain they can have a certain annoyed quality that I think extends more towards, if you're not doing it the way I'm doing it, then it's not the way you should do it, which
100%.
which is not helpful,
Right.
because there's a million different ways to handle something. Like there are certain aspects of that he goes into, like one is like, well, why don't put everybody in this panel has their back to the camera. Don't do that. That's obviously not the way to do, these storytelling things, great. But if it comes down to the way that you construct it or that kind of thing, I think that's more leaning towards that's not how he would do it, and therefore he doesn't think it's the way to do it, which that's where I think it loses me.
Yeah. I remember talking to John Paul Leon, and he was talking about Toth, and he goes, well, it all goes back to Toth, because Toth really cracked the code. I'm paraphrasing here, but Toth's style is like the perfect style for comics, like period.
Yeah.
Simplicity, clarity, blocking, energy, realism, cartooning. Like he found the top of the mountain very quickly, and in a way, and he must have known it. So when Toth is like, I've found the best style to draw comics in, none of you idiots seem to get that. Why are you doing it your way when clearly my way is better? And where he's right, I think, my taste, where I do believe him is the best way to draw comics sequential art is you want to have flow, you want to have clarity, you want to have blocking, you want to have these things. You shouldn't be stopping and looking at the art too much. But people will buy comics if they love the detail too. So a lot of people look at Toth and go, I don't get it. Why isn't there more rendering? It's just too simple. So it really is to each his own. But I do agree that Toth had, like John Paul, I agree with him that Toth did have the best style that does a lot of heavy lifting without a lot of rendering, and he makes it look easy. But if I was drawing simple Toth drawings on my pages, I wouldn't be selling them for that much. Like what his style disregards is interesting detail with really nice, well thought out grays, renderings, illustration, stuff that makes you stop and go, whoa, Toth's style bravely doesn't do that, but you're missing something though. And not every style can do everything, by the way, but his style specifically puts that stuff to the side. Like Toth is not interested in rendering. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, yeah, I know what you're saying, but I think that's also, you're getting into something that is, you're now putting a subjectivity onto it where it's like rendering doesn't in and of itself mean that something is worth more or a better piece of art, And so, I mean, I think that's why Mike, who has very simple art, his pages sell for a lot of money, and it's not because he rendered the shit out of a face or something. You know what I mean? Like, so I think what's the divide that's there is that there is no right, like I think Toth's style is perfect for comics in a very high concept sort of way, in that, okay, the way that he breaks down his panels, the clarity of image, the amount of black versus white that he uses, it's practically perfect, right? Which is fine, but I don't think that means that's the only way things should be done, because if you think about, like, is Alex Toth's work any more or less valuable than Mobius, who is very much on the other side of the spectrum as far as the number of lines he's putting on a page, but is no less competent in the construction of his image or the page as a whole, So I think I think there's a certain amount of just what's the word I'm looking for? Alchemy involved as far as like what makes it good versus what makes it right, what makes it wrong. I don't necessarily know if there is a right or wrong. more than just personal preference, because there are some comic artists who are incredibly heavy in detail that I don't personally, it does not really speak to me that much, but other people love, And so it is weird to try and break it. I think what it comes down to is when you are as deep in the weeds as we are, as far as doing this for a career and like really dedicating yourself to it, you are going to either consciously or unconsciously set up your own guidelines and then compare other people to those, which is a bit of projection on your own stuff, Right. And I think what is important is to be able to realize, okay, I have what works for me. I don't really need to compare myself to other people or tear them down because they're not doing things the way that I am. And I'm not saying that's what you're doing or that's what he was doing, but I think it's just, as a creative person, you get into a zone, right? Where it's like you're doing your thing, you have your idea of how you're doing it. And if something doesn't conform to that or something doesn't come in the same way, you're naturally going to kind of push it away. I'm like, well, I don't have time for that, So I think unfortunately, I think it's just it's a result of focusing and sharpening your own tool so finely that it ends up spreading to other places, even when maybe it's not necessarily right. Yeah. What's the word I'm looking for? Appropriate's not the right word, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. A few things. One is, I think the layman will look at comic book art and go, I like seeing more lines because it looks like there's more effort put in.
Sure.
I like looking at art because I want to see detail. And more lines means more detail. And that's correct. But Toth and Mike leave out detail, but it's still there in the drawing, if that makes sense. Like, you don't have to over-render a face to make it look good, convincing. And there's something Mike and Toth do that is magic because they're able to make less is more work. And it's like, man, why did he pull off this feeling I'm getting with so few lines?
Yeah.
It is brave not to have to over-render. But rendering is also energy. And some people like to see the art's been worked on. They don't want to see barely rendered piece. They think that it's lazy. And they're like, well, I want to see more lines. And I know art collectors and people who read comics, if you're not rendering enough on a face, they just think it's lazy. It's effective. But then there's Sienkiewicz rendering, which can be wild and use a ton of lines. And he's getting his style does heavy lifting in a way that Alex Toth doesn't. And of course, I think Sienkiewicz and Toth are both gods, right?
Yeah.
But then you have 90s rendering where it's like, all right, yes, you used a lot of lines and cross-hatching on faces, but you're doing it as a gimmick because that's what you think people want to see.
Right.
So there's good rendering and there's bad rendering. And I would say a lot of 90s rendering was bad rendering. And a lot of laymen would say, well, look at all that amazing effort that went into those 90s pages. That's more interesting to me than what Toth did. And yeah, that's fine, but I feel like if you're going to go wild with rendering, you better have a good reason. And
totally.
Sienkiewicz uses it. It's because he's getting energy and the other thing too is you can go back and look at Sienkiewicz and get more and more and more and more out of it every time. When you've seen Toth, you're like, yep, I've seen that panel. Like, I can only stare at this for so long because there's not a lot here to really ponder. But that's what Toth was doing because he didn't want you to stall on this panel. He wanted you to keep reading. So he did it on purpose. Whereas if I'm going to buy a page of art and really keep it in my brain, in the gallery of my brain of like, man, I fucking love Sienkiewicz. And every time I look at Sienkiewicz and Topi and whoever, I see things that I didn't see before. And that's when Toth's stuff becomes less interesting, I'm sure that would piss him off, but it's interesting the style.
Or maybe not. He might be the kind of guy who's like, I don't give a shit. It's,
but
he did so much work in those non-archival markers that it's like fading anyway. It's like, it was just the easiest
good job,
tool in
Alex,
front of him.
by the way. Rendering on shitty computer paper.
Yeah.
Like, you could argue you didn't really care about the archival nature of what the hell you're doing. But he would say, I love what Sienkiewicz is doing. That's illustration. That's not comic book art.
Sure.
That's not storytelling.
I could see that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
It's
again,
interesting,
even
like
there,
what your style is designed to do, you know?
yeah. I
Because
was
a
just gonna.
style you pick, sorry,
No, no,
a
go ahead.
style you pick can't do everything. Like a style you pick, like mine is designed for enough rendering. I want some speed in there. I want energy, but I do want Toth simplicity every now and then.
Yeah.
But what I'm never gonna give you is like a hard boiled that I forget the name of the artist.
Oh, Jeff
Where
Darrow.
yeah, I'm never gonna give you Jeff Darrow detail. That's just not what my stuff is about. It's not
Yeah.
designed to handle that. It's designed to find a happy medium between rendering, storytelling, energy, a little bit of manga, some mood, and that's why I built it, whether I realize it or not. And your style is built in a similar way, where I want looseness and brushiness, and I want chaos.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
we're not trying to be clean. We're not trying to be J. Scott Campbell or Jim Lee. You know, it's just interesting how different styles are capable of handling different things.
Yeah. What I was going to say was, I think it comes down to what, when you're talking about, he might look at Sienkiewicz and say, well, that's illustration, that's not comics, that's not storytelling. It's like, I think it depends on what you consider storytelling to be, and Toth's idea of that might be completely different. Because I mean, if you look at a page of Sienkiewicz's work, like a splash page where he renders the shit out of an office building or something, why is that not storytelling? He's telling the story of the image with every line he puts on the page.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah, I remember somebody. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, it's like if you take like Yngwie Malmsteen and B.B. King, right? I don't think either one of them. They're both masters of the guitar, but the number of notes that B.B. King will use in a guitar solo is like 1/100th of the amount of notes Yngwie Malmsteen will use. Yeah. But there is an artistry to the fact that they are doing the same thing. They are expressing the same thing. It's just that the way they choose to do it is different.
Yeah. Yeah. I think if Toth is less is more folk music, then you've got the guy from Extreme who can play like Bill Sienkiewicz.
Yes.
And sometimes I'm in the mood for Extreme, you know?
Yeah.
It's funny. I remember when I was learning about storytelling, my friend was trying to teach me about a specific type of storytelling where it was like clarity, simplicity, flow, moment to moment, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I said to him, well, I really like Travis Touré. And he said, fuck Travis Touré. That guy can't tell a story. And I'm like, sure. Okay. So Travis is not concerned with clarity and storytelling. Like every panel is an illustration that's meant to stop you in your tracks.
Yeah.
And it does, because it's amazing. But there was a panel, he was drawing Wildcats, and he had this great rendering of Grifter doing some Black Ops shit. And because Grifter's mask hangs down with gravity, he was actually upside down. And Travis was like, oh man, well, you're going to see his face if I draw the scene. So he had the idea to put a strap under it because he had goggles on too. And that was a way to keep him looking like Grifter while also being upside down and blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
And like what you just said, that he is telling me a story.
Right.
Even though it's not Alex Toth smoothness and clarity, it still is like the story of a guy who wears a mask and it's hanging upside down, and he knew this, and like they're still there. Like it's not sequential art storytelling. It's definitely illustration storytelling. And I think what I'd say to Toth is, first of all, you got to calm the fuck down. Stop writing these letters. Second is, stop telling people how to draw faces. Get off social media too. Third would be, what about...
That would be a nightmare. Alex Toth on social media. Oh my God.
Yeah. It's like when you accidentally ask your grandparent the wrong question about black people. And then you're like, ooh, slow down, grandma. Come on. But yeah, I mean, if Toth... And you must have sensed this in some way. When you have a bunch of... he's doing a sequential art storytelling. That looks awesome. Then he does a splash page. He's got to know that this is designed to slow you down. And you got to take a little more time on rendering to be more of an illustrator today. Stop trying to be a sequential artist today. Just be an illustrator. Like there's ways where you can ebb and flow into different natures of storytelling throughout a comic. You know, it doesn't all have to be sequential art. It can still be illustration and experimentation, you know?
Yeah, you know, one of the things I think about from his art a lot is there is a story that he drew. It's about these Roman guards, and then the twist of the story is the last page is a splash page. They're the Roman guards who are at the crucifixion,
Oh yeah.
And so the last page is the splash page of the 3 crosses with Jesus and the other 2 guys there. The Pips, I think. I don't remember. They and I was reading about it, and the image, the final image that was printed was the crosses are all done in silhouette. They're completely blacked out, right? And someone was saying they saw the original art, and up close they realized that he had rendered the entire thing. He had rendered the crosses. He had rendered the figures on the crosses completely out. They could see like the pen marks. And so what they realized is he rendered the whole thing and then realized, no, the best way to do this is if I just black it out. And so he made that storytelling choice that just the shadows of the crosses would be more impactful than if he had done a fully rendered Jesus with the crown of thorns and bleeding and stuff. And I think about that a lot, because that shows how much thought goes into how simple his art is. But at the same time, it's the kind of thing where it's like, there's probably someone else who would have the exact opposite thought and be like, no, I think for this shot, in order to really get across what is going on here, and like, I would need to render them. I need you to see it. And so it's one of those things where I don't, is there a right answer? Is there a wrong answer? I don't know. But it is really interesting to think about art creation in that sense, where there are so many different ways you can go with the same problem.
Yeah. I think what got me over my hump was I said, I can't fit Alex Toth into my art everywhere.
Yeah.
But if I'm drawing, I have a priest in the background, or a bunch of narcos who are different character actors who play them, basically. So I have guy with big mustache, guy with no chin, guy with ponytail, whatever, different shapes. And I thought, well, that's where Alex Toth goes, is rendering those guys. So
Sure.
normally I would have rendered them my own way, but I think I can try to be more like Toth here and go a little more cartoony and just see how it feels. But when it comes to backgrounds and everything else, like I have a way I draw cars. I have a way I put the camera and this and that. Like, don't change that. Alex Toth doesn't belong there.
Yeah.
But I can certainly think of him when it comes to characters, expressions, and simple blocking. It's something I always try to use from him. Like, where Toth is obvious in my work, and where his work is obvious in Mignola's, is blocking and where to put blacks and the staging of characters, and finding simple ways, simple techniques that can do a lot of heavy lifting for you. It's not obvious to people that aren't artists, because they're sort of looking for that tell. Ooh, that's how this guy draws this thing. That's how he draws Spider-Man. But if you're an artist, you can sort of see, like, oh, I see you not using the chords from the other artist, but I can see you finding a new way to rewrite the whole song.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Sure.
So yeah, when I realized to like stop injecting Alex Toth everywhere, just use him here, and there, and it's interesting because like I love Ashley Wood is another artist I love. He uses like calligraphy nibs to render, and it's like gross and chalky, but it works. And he purposefully uses paper that bleeds a little bit because he thinks bleeding is cool, which is the way I just said it does sound cool. But he doesn't really do a lot of backgrounds. His focus is on the figure, and you can imagine a background, and it doesn't look blank because he's got a way of rendering the foreground. You don't need backgrounds. But I'm telling a story here, and I just can't afford to be all Ashley Wood. So I have to I can't afford to be as experimental on my foreground figures, because if I start rendering the background that way, everything's going to be mud. So, Ashley Wood has said, my art doesn't require backgrounds as much. He'll find a way to do them in his own way. But if you read his sequential art, it's like very suspiciously like, where the fuck are the backgrounds in this comic? And you can tell he's just not interested in that shit, which good for him, But it's interesting to know, like, I love this artist, but I don't want to take everything from them. I just want to know where I can inject them appropriately. Because if you try to force them onto your art in too many places, it won't work. You need to figure out how you're different, and just try to be balanced with it, I guess.
Yeah. So it's a constant evolution,
Yeah. I part of me wants to have known Alex Toth. Part of me is happy not to have met him. I think, if he's gonna be a dick, then I think I'm good.
Yeah, it's probably better just to hear about stories from people who did know him.
Yeah, he's definitely a don't meet your heroes type of guy. I think even uh, Tim Sale and a friend went to his house in LA and just knocked on his door. And they knew what they were gonna get. And of course, he was like a little curmudgeonly and rude, but they were ready for it. I might not be telling the story correctly, and that's so I apologize. But yeah, I don't know. I wonder, do you think people are gonna have that impression of you one day, like when you're 80 and they're like, "Man, I knocked on Clay's door and he's exactly like I thought he was," you know? He's
I'm
behind
not,
a
listen,
synthesizer and
man, I'm not telling people where I live. Come on. I'm hoping it's like I'm like Daniel Plainview at the end of There Will Be Blood, where they just kind of walk in and I'm at the end of a long hallway behind a desk that I've been at for 15 hours, and I just start throwing shoes at them to tell them to get the hell out.
Yeah. Yeah, man.
Also, your backgrounds are terrible. Now get out of my house.
Stop measuring your faces, fuckhead. Just draw them. Like, don't do anything differently. I've found the best style.
You have access to the entire internet in this future that I'm dying in, so there's no reason you can't get reference to draw a goddamn phone.
Yeah. Oh, Alex. He needs an angry translator, just like Obama had in Key and Peele.
Yeah, I know. I think he handled it pretty well on his own. I think. Anyway, okay. I think that's gonna do it for us today.
Well, I do have one more request
Oh, yeah,
for people
sure.
listening. I'm having audio issues, and if anybody is an audio nerd, can you help me out here? I notice my microphone isn't recording me when I laugh, almost like some kind of it's filtering out clapping, snapping. If I drop something, like any kind of mic popping,
Listen,
it's
Sean,
just not picking it up.
you don't need to pretend that my jokes are funnier than they are by saying, "Oh, it's the computer that's not picking up my." I get it. It's fine.
No, I mean, it just annoys me because you're much clearer on this than my audio, and I don't know what I switched on or off. But if someone can tell me, like I'm using a blue ice ball or snowball mic, I'm using Audacity, I'm using Discord, and I have something clicked on and I cannot figure it out. I've Googled it, so if you have any ideas, you can help me out. Thank you, because I'm tired of listening to myself, and I know that I laugh. It's part of the inflection, and it's gone because my microphone doesn't think it's interesting when I laugh.
I just pipe it in. I have a canned laughter button that I just pipe in, so that's why it always sounds like we're doing this in front of a live studio audience.
It's funny if you just canned laughed me just to make me sound like shit.
Yeah, next time we hang out, I'll bring a mic and make sure to just do some room tone of you just laughing at different stages of intensity.
Oh, man.
Anyway, thank you guys for listening. If you want to help support the show, check out patreon.com/thepenskyfile. And next time we'll be watching... Oh, shit, I just lost it. This is Season 2. And the last episode we watched was Eyewitness. So the next 2 episodes are Final Cut and The Last Resort. Thanks, guys. We'll see you.